television programs were made. They portrayed the artificial intelligence scientists as heroic figures.
People often ask if there will ever be machines that think. Well, we ourselves are machines that think by using great computers in our brains. And someday we will know enough to build machines that do such things and more.
No mention was made of the fact that Marvin Minsky had already built a thinking machine. His work had helped to create the memory of the cruise missile.
One of the most interesting things about the history of artificial intelligence is that the public was engaged in a kind of gee whiz perception of artificial intelligence as the quest for a thinking machine, when in fact what was really happening behind the scenes and out of the view of the public was this development of very dangerous, really revolutionary weapon systems that had the potential for changing the nature of war. And it was that was the primary focus of the funding agency that was providing almost all the money for artificial intelligence research. And this was almost never mentioned in the general press coverage of this particular field.
And I want to build myself into a machine that lives forever.
We are at 16:25:47 on the 23rd of February, literally 4:25 in the afternoon. And Eagle Troop has just penetrated the main Iraqi defenses. What we're seeing here is a simulation of an actual battle that occurred during the war with Iraq, recreated by ARPA. And the events that you're seeing here are as they were reported by the soldiers who took part in the battle. And it represents literally a giant composite memory of all of the individuals who participated in the battle, as well as a variety of experts who had the opportunity to study the battle after it occurred.
The Gulf War could be viewed as an absolutely tailor-made testing ground for a lot of DARPA ideas and systems. Since we had an environment that was basically flat, it was like a laboratory in the sense that it gave the military supporters of AI a tailor-made situation in which they could prove their case with systems that could remove personnel from harm's way.
We are not in the business of destroying Kuwait while we are liberating Kuwait. And we certainly didn't want to go in and completely destroy the oil field or do undue damage. Now, what you're seeing here is that's the manifold area, the very small area that I talked about, and you're looking right through the nose of the guided munition as it's flown straight into the small manifold area to destroy it.
The Gulf War was a triumph for those who had developed intelligent weapons. Much of the conflict was fought by machines. It was a war without personal, painful memories. The deaths and destruction on the Iraqi side were witnessed only by the machines and a few soldiers. When those soldiers returned, they found that their memories were different from the public perception of the war.
When I came back from the war, I talked to those people who were not there, and their memory, at least to me, was completely different than what I had experienced. Their memory was a long distance, very clean, very precise video game war where you put the X on the target, you shoot the bomb from 10 miles away, and you go home and you have a soda or a beer or whatnot. And that's not how I recall it, okay? For us, it was a lot of blood, sweat, tears, fear, anxiety. And it was. When you came back, there was two completely different perceptions of what had happened. It almost made it too simple. It almost made it without pain, without suffering, without blood.
The scientists who had begun the experiments on human memory 40 years before dreamt of freeing people from the memory of terrible events in the past. Those who had designed the machines that fought the Gulf War had finally achieved just that. The detailed record of the terrible and brutal events are contained not in human minds, but in a giant computer built by ARPA. Every gunshot and every death can be played back from any position.
The easiest way to think of this, literally, is that we're on a magic carpet, and we can travel freely throughout the database and observe the events that are occurring as they occurred at that point in time. What this record represents is a ground truth of the events as they occurred on this given day. It's memory, locked in the computer, if you will. Unlike human memory and the frailties associated with it, this is a record that won't change. This composite memory, if you will remain the same throughout history. Not subject to embellishment, nor to losses.
But at the very moment of triumph, the world was changing. The simple structure of the Cold War was beginning to disappear. Soviet power started to collapse. As it did so, memories from the past re-emerged throughout Europe. They fueled bitter rivalries that had been hidden since the end of the Second World War. 50 years ago, many hoped that these memories had been wiped forever, that the past was under control.
And now we've lived through a period in which that notion of managed memory, if I can put the thing that way, has changed. And what we get instead is this horrible emergence of the past. We haven't escaped our past. We see it all over the new states of Russia, of the former Soviet Union. We see it all over the Bosnian War and the rest of it, and begin to have notions that are much more biological, that we're trapped in our evolutionary past, that we're victims of our history. We then become slaves of the past. We become tragic. We become victims, basically, of the past and of fate.
The idea that it was possible to free human beings from the ghosts of the past was a noble dream. It was part of an age that believed it could control history by manipulating human memory. That age is now over, and we are caught up by the irrational forces of the past once again. Except for a few individuals who live in a different world, a world free of memory.
What had been done to me was wrong and horrible, but I was freed up because I didn't have any memory. I didn't have to worry about a memory. I was exactly who I had shaped myself into being, and people kept wanting to feel sorry for me and that I was a victim. I understand that because there were horrible experiments, but on a personal, individual basis, I was not a victim, because I was freed up from any of the garbage that people who have memory carry around with them all the time. Memory is a dangerous thing. Not just for individuals, but for whole societies, for cultures. They keep looking backwards and trying to relive and reshape the past when they can't, and they know they can't, but it keeps pulling them backwards, and they keep reliving the stuff that happened, and I'm free of that.